at 2,173.74. The ESX 200 was higher by 0.3% to close at 5,871.8. And equities in mainland China turned in their worst performance of the year, with the Shanghai Composite down by about 1.4%. The Shenzhen Composite plunged 2.44%, while Hong Kong's benchmark Hang Seng Index initially traded lower following the drop in Chinese shares, but later shrugged off the negative sentiment to trade 0.45% higher. Also, company earnings now. Lafarge Africa has posted a 5.2 billion naira profit in earnings for the first quarter of the year. The building materials giant released the result today, attributing the improved performance and sustained market share to its commercial transformation efforts. The logistics and industrial improvement plan, as well as the energy optimization strategy, delivered the expected performance. Now, while revenue for the period finished at 81.3 billion naira, Lafarge looks to grow market share this year by 2%. Away from those numbers now, the W.Bank Group President Jim Yong Kim and the President of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, Jin LeCun, have signed a memorandum of understanding to strengthen the cooperation and knowledge sharing between the institutions. The World Bank explains in a statement that the MOU provides an overall framework for cooperation between the World Bank Group and the AIIB in common areas of interest, including development financing, staff exchanges, and analytical and sector work. The institutions signed a co-financing framework agreement for investment projects a year ago, and since then they've co-financed 5 projects supporting power generation in Pakistan, a natural gas pipeline in Azerbaijan, and slum upgrading, dam safety, and regional infrastructure development in Indonesia. Both institutions are discussing more projects to be co-financed in 2017 and 2018. Meanwhile, as the spring meetings of the 2017 edition of the World Bank Group and the IMF dragged to a close last week in Washington, there was an increased focus on recent economic developments in sub-Saharan Africa. The briefings and panels attended by some African finance ministers and policymakers take a look at current situations of policy coordination, central banking, agriculture, and infrastructure. Here are some views as expressed by the finance ministers of Cameroon and Zambia and the head of the IMF African Department.
Central bank on the monetary policy, government on the fiscal policy should always work hand in hand, take into consideration economic situations. There are periods where you will push for probably more credit to the economy, some periods where you will have to pull back because of the hit it will create in the environment. Of course, we need to really take into consideration inflation, where it's hampering the purchasing power of the population when it's necessary, and taking advantage of some solutions implemented elsewhere. Central bank can also help promote, support the development of the economies. It is not a clear-cut answer with Chinese walls. No, I think it is a cooperation between the different instruments that are used to implement policy towards the development of our economies.
Now, with the fiscal consolidation that we are pursuing, we have seen that monetary policy has loosened up a little bit, and the effect of that is that the liquidity in the economy has begun to be boosted, and also the cost of money, which is critical for the private sector, is coming down. And we have seen that in 2017, there are signs of recovery. The growth and the oxygen in the economy is beginning to gather. So obviously there must be a correct interplay between monetary policy and fiscal policy. And coming to some issues around incentives, we have seen that the tax incentives, whereas they are important, they are also crucial. For Zambia, what may be crucial in terms of the private sector is, are we able to supply power continuously? It doesn't matter what incentive I give you, but if you don't have power, it doesn't matter. And 2 is on logistics, particularly issues around bureaucracy, crossing borders. If you're going to have your truck there for 4 days, tax won't move you. So we're dealing with the practical issues that minimize the cost of doing business as the front line, and then incentives and other issues, come in at the secondary level. And we're also encouraging that the private sector, please be compliant, tax compliant, because it's from you we're getting the money. We don't want to enforce rigorously, but we want to collect taxes so that we can be able to deal with creating an environment where business can be able to prosper. So that is the direction we're pursuing.
It's important to not conflate the level of income in the region with the rate of growth that we talk about and are reporting today. So yes, I mean, Africa is starting from a very low level of, many countries in Africa are starting from a very low level of income, and reflecting that have been growing rapidly. So when we talk about growth, we're talking about how the pace at which countries are beginning to catch up and close the gap with countries that are at a higher income level. What does it mean tangibly? Year to year, it's difficult to show the tangible changes, when we talk about GDP growth. But I think it's important to take a broad sweep of time and think about the incredible transformation in most countries in Africa, and very few which haven't been affected over the last 15, 20 years, where we've seen huge improvements in standards of living. And I measure this in various dimensions, not just income levels, but really also, other more intangible things which we don't, talk about often enough. So if you look at indicators like maternal mortality rates, infant mortality rates, these are, measures which affect the most vulnerable in society, in particular in a region like Africa. Those have declined tremendously. As I mentioned, poverty levels have declined, by no means as fast as we would like to see them to be, but they're certainly much lower than they were. So this 15, 20-year period, if you compare, the situation many African countries were in the early 90s compared to now, huge transformation in all of these cases. And so that's what sustained growth of 5, 6, 8% delivers over time. And you will see it if you compare now versus as I said, 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
Well, Business Incorporated returns in just a moment, so please stay with us.